All right, everybody. Well, welcome to our Marblehead Memories monthly meeting. Appreciate you all joining us. We want to thank National Grand Bank. They're our signature sponsor for this. They've been very generous in helping us do what we need to do to get this really exciting project off the ground in February and keep it going throughout this kind of unprecedented time. So we're very grateful to them. So this month's theme, every month we have a different theme, and you can find out more about the project and about the upcoming programs and themes on our website. So marbleheadmuseum.org/Marblehead Memories. And I'm going to stop my screen share here, and so we can all see each other. And so this month's theme is schools, teachers, anything that kind of goes along with that. Any stories you might have that you'd like to share. What I'll ask us to do is stay muted unless you are the one speaking. And then there's a small group of us, so this should be pretty easy to ask questions and chime in with questions and comments and things like that. Is there anybody who would be interested in kicking us off with something from their memory bank? Or just tell us where you went to school, teachers, your favorite administrators, anything about sports, athletics that has to do with your time in the Marblehead school system.
I mean, I think it's crazy that good morning, everybody. I think it's crazy. I think I went to St. Stephen's for nursery school. I went to Rhodes School. I went to Bell School. I went to Star of the Sea, which was transferred to the town for 3 years. I know, Patty, you were probably there too.
Yeah, I didn't know you went to Star of the Sea, Jack. Oh my goodness, yeah.
We were the last year. The class of '83 would have been the last year.
Yep.
Went to the junior high and went to the high school. So six schools through Marblehead, which was pretty cool. And the fact that we all got together for the first time. I know Marblehead students now get together in 4th grade, where everybody comes together and gets to know all of their classmates from around town that they'll likely graduate with. Now 4th grade now, it was 6th grade back then. So there were already fast relationships already built, but we also got together where we had Seaside Park as our recess, and tennis courts, ball fields, open fields. Whenever there was a snowstorm, you could guarantee that there wasn't a piece of stray cardboard left in the school, because that was the choice for sledding down the hill. The stuff that we did back then, you certainly couldn't get away with today. But on contrast, the Rhodes School gymnasium was in the basement, and a crooked floor because there was concrete over ledge. But that was, Rhodes School was probably my favorite school out of the whole bunch. So I hope that kicks off a conversation. I see we have people from in town and from that didn't grow up here. But just again, lucky to live here, and the fact that we're so multi-generational in this town, and we can talk amongst fellow classmates is pretty cool. Some 150 years later, it seems like. So I hope that gets us started. I see I'm on somebody else's account here, so I'm going to switch out at the same time.
Thanks, Jack.
Emily used my computer the other night for her interview for internet speed. So
you are incognito.
Right?
I'll go next if you want.
Yes, please, Marge. Thank you.
All right. I started at the Tiny Talk School on Elm Street, and that was nursery school. I had this cool roller coaster. It was probably 6 feet long, but back then it was really good. It was just like a little roller coaster, wooden thing that they built for us. Then I spent the next 6 years at the Gary School. Of course, I had all the teachers that my mother had, so it was really fun. What my friend and I talk about a lot is the cloak rooms. We had cloak rooms before you went into the classrooms. They were hotter than heck because there wasn't any windows. and our lunches sat out there for like, 4 hours in the heat. So a lot of us had our tuna fish sandwiches, and I know my mother used to make cream cheese and jelly, and it was like mush by the time I got it, but I can't, we got milk. Our milk was delivered from Martin's Dairy, which was right next door. So what we did was, we spent the day in school, then you ran home and you had to change your clothes, and you go back down to the playground and play for the rest of the afternoon until it was time for supper. Then I went to the junior high, which was up on Village Street, and I happened to be in the class that had split sessions. So they were building an addition onto the school. So 7th grade got to, or at least the part I was in, went from like, I think it was like 11 to 4 or something like that. So unfortunately, we couldn't participate in sports or any after school activities because we were still in school. And of course, in the winter, we ended up walking home in the dark because we didn't have buses. And that's when we intermingled with the rest of the school districts, was in the 7th grade. Some of the kids in the 6th grade from our class got to go to the accelerated class. Those were the smart ones. They left us dumb ones back behind in the Gary school. Smart ones got to go to the high school for accelerated classes. So that kind of split our class up because we got divided between the smart people and the dumb people. I don't know if they get away with that now. Then it was into the high school and graduated in 72. And I was involved in sports, so that was really, really good. So fun time.
How did it, for those of you who grew up, how did it work back then? Was it a neighborhood where you lived determined what elementary school you went to? Is that how it was?
It was for us. Yeah, and it was divided. The Gary School and Story School were kind of close. So I think in the 6th grade, actually, we did go meet, because I met some of my good friends in the 6th grade because I was in band and we had a concert. So we merged together for concerts and stuff. And that's when I met a lot of people from the Story School. So, but other than that, you stayed in your little neighborhood.
And I remember with the first monthly meeting we had, I think it was Betty Hunt was talking about going home for lunch, but you're talking about having this, what'd you call it, a closet? Not a closet. It
was a cloakroom. You hung your coats up on little hooks, and you put your lunch bag down. In kindergarten, we had cubby holes, but this was like cubby holes out in the hall. And then at lunchtime, you went out and got your lunch, came back to your desk and ate it. And I was always impressed with my 2nd grade teacher, Mrs. Houghton. She was like, because this would have been 59, 60. She was like a hippie back then. She used to bring Dannon yogurt and had Dannon yogurt for lunch every day. And I was like so impressed. I go, wow, this looks like a really cool lunch. She'd have like coffee and vanilla and chocolate yogurt. She was my favorite teacher, actually.
I was going to ask what year you were at Tiny Tot. I could tell you were younger than me, and you are, but I was at Tiny Tot as well. And all I remember is that they gave us snacks, and they gave us tomato soup all the time, which I didn't like. And then
we
they
had
make
spaghetti.
Spaghetti.
Well, every once in a while you got to stay for lunch if you're like, I don't know, like if my mother worked or something, I got to stay for lunch and do the afternoon. And I remember going upstairs, there was like this little room and we had lunch and it was spaghetti.
I'd forgotten that, but these were mid-morning snacks, and then they'd make us take naps, and I really hated that. But
Which school are you talking about?
Tiny Tot Nursery.
Tiny Tot.
Oh, Tiny Tot, okay.
And then I went to the Glover School.
59, I think, probably been 59.
Yeah, I was before you. But
We
everything
definitely, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say everything was neighborhood schools, because I went to Glover, and all my little everyone everyone was from the neighborhood and everyone walked to school or rode bikes. No one was driven. And then later years, we had buses. Did you not have buses, school buses?
We didn't have buses where I was because I was downtown area and you had to be 2 miles out and I was like 1.99 miles. So the kids at the other end of the street got the buses and we didn't. And it was a cold walk up Village Street to the junior high. Let me tell you, our knees were purple by the time we got there.
But parents never drove us. I mean, I don't remember my parents ever driving me to school.
No.
Funny, my sister talks about my mom was her softball coach, and we lived by the library. And just talking about busing, I always seemed to go to the school that included the neck. So we did have the bus pull up every day at school. But my sister was on my mom's softball team, and they practiced down at Green Street. And my sister and I were talking about it a couple of years ago when I was coaching softball. And, my mom would drive down to Green Street. My sister would put her glove on her handlebars, have a quarter for Italian ice at Mullins afterwards, and ride her bike down to practice with the team and my mom, and then get on her bike and have her Italian ice and go home. So no, we didn't get rides all that much. But I will add that this is, coming into summer, I think we're going to be competing with the weather a little bit. And this and the waterfront talk are two that we definitely need to revisit, especially with this one, because I have no doubt that if we do a little bit more outreach to some of our teachers, I think it'd be great to have some teachers involved in this conversation. They always say that the students that the teachers remember weren't always the best students, but fortunately I'm well known amongst my former teachers. But I know that we can get a lot more going on. But when I look out the window and see 80 degrees on the bank clock outside, I think we're probably going to be competing with the weather, with the summer.
I agree with you, definitely. But I am glad we have those that we have, and welcome, Maureen. Thank you for joining us. I was going to ask Marge, I think you mentioned how your freezing cold knees by the time you walked to school. What was the dress code like? What were you allowed to wear? What did you wear to school, to public school back then?
We had to wear dresses or skirts, couldn't wear pants. I remember in 7th grade, we had sewing class, and I made a pair of culottes, and I made a little shift with shorts underneath it, and I got sent home from school for wearing those to school. I said, but I made them in home ec, in school. Nope, you can't wear them, you have to go home. So we had that with knee socks or ankle socks, and that's why it was cold. I suppose we could have put pants on, but we didn't think of that, under our skirts, but we didn't think of that. We did have Mr. Coggins, who was a teacher in high school, and he lived down on Frost Lane, and he would I met with, we walked to school with friends, and 3 of us would meet down at the end of Elm Street, and he'd pick us up sometimes and take us to school. But you were still walking home after sports. We had softball up at the Getchell's Pit, and we'd have to walk from the high school to Getchell's Pit to play softball, and then back to the high school, and then home again. So we put in a lot of miles.
Yeah, Maureen, we were just talking about how there may have been buses for some people, but a lot of people walked, and then after school, you rode your bike around. Nobody was driving people around, not like driving the line to get into the high school, like nowadays is non-existent.
I used to be jealous of the kids taking buses. I used to think, oh my God, that would be the greatest thing in the world, was to take a bus.
So it was only, you had to be over 2 miles away from your school to get a bus? Is that what it was? And then the next,
I think
obviously.
so.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I never got to take the bus.
I think it
except
was
for sports.
It was faster back in the day to walk to school than it was today. And the reason I say that is that my route to the Bell School was up Maverick Street through Judge Devers' yard, who I also delivered his newspaper to, through the McGee's yard, and to Bell School. And and so, you know, shortcuts were a must in this town when we were kids, and
Oh yeah.
and we always took the path the crow flies more often than we took the roads, for sure. So
Oh yeah. We cut
Yeah,
through
we
people's
cut-
yards.
We cut down through to get to the junior high. We'd go down. I was on Peach Island, so we go down Palm Street and up. I can't think of the name of the street now. Green Street, and cut through what I guess it's a road now, but it was a dirt road to go over to Taft Street.
Richmond
And then,
Terrace.
Yeah, down
Yeah.
that way. It was like we'd squiggle all over the place just to get there. And I used to cut through Dot Hogan's yard on Peach Highlands to get over to Green Street Playground, but she used to yell at me all the time and tell me I couldn't do that anymore. So, but I could cut through the fields, right, you know, on top of the hill there in Peach Highlands, and go right over to Green Street down to where Hood's Foam was.
Today you'd be in the police report today, Marge.
I know, I would. I probably was then too.
No, if the cop pulled you aside, or if a neighbor pulled you aside, or if somebody other than your parents pulled you aside, sometimes it was worse than your parents catching you in Marblehead.
Oh,
Again,
yeah.
if they did that, they'd be in the police log.
Really?
My
Right.
first cigarette I got caught by a neighbor. I was down in the neighbor's back driveway because it went down into the woods, had a cigarette, and then some old lady, probably my age, but some old lady called my mother and said, "Your daughter's trying to set fire to the Waterman's house." I was like, "No, I was having a cigarette."
There weren't fences. I moved back to Marblehead after 40 years, and my aunt, who was about 95 at the time, asked me what I noticed, what was the biggest difference I noticed. And to me, it was the trees, because growing up, even after the elm trees were destroyed, there were all these beautiful trees that overhung the main streets like Pleasant and Humphrey, and they're pretty much gone. They weren't replaced. But my aunt said for her the big difference was the fences. No one had fences, which is how we could go through all the yards. And my husband, who's a lawyer, is horrified that I still walk through total strangers' yards, because we always did it. And he calls me a trespasser, but you can't do that as much anymore, because the first thing people do now, especially if they have a beautiful view of the water, is they put up a fence so no one else can see it. But anyway.
No, you're right.
I was going to say, we used to play hide and seek, and we would just like go hide in people's garages.
Yeah.
Just go in and, climb up in the rafters and hide in some neighbor's garage. And, you didn't think anything of going into other people's private property.
Plus, I love that you mentioned the fields. I don't know if they're still there behind Peach Highlands, but my main memory is every corner had woods. We even had a few farms, little farms around town, not big ones, but like Hobbs. At Hobbs, there was still a farm, and, more like vegetable. And there were fields everywhere. There was a field behind my house, which now has 3 houses in it. And that was fun. We always played in the field after school.
I was going to ask,
kickball at recess.
Yeah. So was that what was the normal after school activities for you all? Was it just getting together with neighborhood kids and playing and going in people's backyards and stuff?
When we were younger, yeah, before organized sports in high school.
We had a ton of kids in our neighborhood, and we would play, kickball, capture the flag, Red Rover. We just jump roping. We had all kinds of games. But basically, we would come home from school, get a snack, get changed. We always changed. You never wore your school clothes out to play. We had definite play clothes versus school clothes. And then, you'd go out and play until it was supper time.
I don't know about you guys, but whatever it was, my parents never knew what we were up to.
Oh, no.
And I tell people that I was the youngest of 6 because the dog was older than I was. And I I got let out with the dog in the morning and let in with the dog when the street lights came on. That's what it felt like. I mean, being the youngest of five, I was. There aren't that many pictures of me. I was never well fed, but I could run fast. So.
Mhm.
So yeah, the parent involvement and the scheduling and all that stuff that goes on today certainly didn't take place back in the olden days, right?
But it sounds like there was almost a neighborhood watch, or your parents could trust other adults to kind of keep a watch on you, whereas like you said, nowadays people leave people alone, right?
You could get away with a lot, but on the other hand, you couldn't get away with much. So
Right. I don't think we needed to be watched. We just hung out.
I think you were watched more than you knew.
Maybe.
Right,
I remember getting in trouble once when I went over to a friend's house after school, and I didn't tell my mom, but she had her network out. I got in trouble when I got home, but she's like, oh, Mrs. So-and-so saw you going over. Just, So,
How your mom kept track of all you kids, the grades. I don't know how she did it.
Yeah, there were 10 kids, but
I
yeah,
know.
everyone,
Your mom.
somebody knew where you were.
Yeah.
Wow. What about nowadays we turn 16 and we got our licenses and we got a car oftentimes. What was like high school like? Did you all have cars? Were you cruising down Pleasant Street, or how did that work?
Absolutely not.
No.
I mean, it was a big thing to get your license, but
we were still on bikes.
yeah, it was mostly, I would say, bikes. Yeah.
We were cruising on our bikes.
Yeah,
And-
go everywhere.
And going back to the getting in trouble part, I just remember other kids' parents as being wonderful. They were like moms. They'd give you the snack if you were over at a friend's house. But I remember one day the doorbell rang and I opened the door and Peanut Powers, the policeman, was there. And we stayed within we might have acted out a little, but we really stayed within the bounds of, what we could get away with. I don't think any of us were really juvenile delinquents. I remember who the bad kids were, and I could mention, but anyway, but I remember he was at the door and I was terrified. He was just making like it's ironic talking about it in these times. He was just making a community visit. But I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, there's a policeman at my door. What? It must be me. What did I do? Or anyway.
Okay.
We were pretty well behaved.
Did I hear you right though? Peanut Powers, the policeman?
Yeah.
Okay, just checking. That in and of itself, does anybody know how that name came about? Because that's pretty awesome. Peanut? No? Okay, just checking.
Everyone had nicknames at that generation.
That's
It
true.
kind of fell out, I think, with our generation more, but it used to be everyone had a nickname.
Yeah, he was the motorcycle cop in town.
Right.
And I don't know, maybe he was tiny. Maybe that's why. I don't know.
Really, he seemed huge to me, but I was probably.
I think he was small. I don't remember. I only had a run in with a couple of them.
That's true, because actually in the 60s, late 60s, drugs kind of came into town, and there was stuff going on. Again, I could name names, but no, you did ask about teachers, and I was wondering, I had a favorite teacher and a most feared and dreaded teacher, but I was wondering who other people loved or hated or remember the most.
So who was your favorite?
Well, my favorite teacher of all time, and this was an elementary school teacher, and I still think she's the best teacher, even though I had great teachers in junior high, high school, college, whatever. My fourth grade teacher, Maxine Waite, at the Glover School, and you still hear people talk about her with reverence, was amazing. And I'd love to know whatever happened to her after she left teaching, but she loved history, which I never did, even before or after her, but she made everything we did come alive. she did things probably the way they do at a Montessori school or something now, where you participated in everything. Like when she taught history, she did little plays, and we had to act out plays, and oh, she was just wonderful. We had a play I remember about the presidents, and it really had an effect on people, because I remember Larry Alexander. I don't know if any of you knew him, but he was in my 4th grade class, and I still remember he was Teddy Roosevelt. And she made such an impression on him that he then became a state representative. He went into politics, and he would credit her. But then I still think with dread of my 1st grade teacher, Miss McCarthy. I think, and it could just be a bad memory, but I think she actually slapped me once. And my parents were afraid I wouldn't even go to 2nd grade. I was so terrified. And, so there were great teachers and there were less great teachers. But,
I know the guidance counselors I wasn't too thrilled with, because back in the day when you were going to college, you went up to the guidance counselors and you looked at a catalog and you picked a school. That was it. You didn't go visit. But we sat there, and Mr. Beach said to my mother, "Don't even bother looking at the catalogs. She's too stupid to go to college anyways. You don't even need to waste your money applying." Can you imagine now if somebody said that?
That's terrible. Oh.
So that was my experience with one that I didn't care for.
What was punishment? Was there punishment? Was slapping acceptable, or was that unusual?
I doubt it. I think it was, I might have just, I think of her as such a monster that I'm not sure it ever happened.
I went to Catholic school, and it was certainly allowed for them to use corporal punishment. It never really affected me, though. One time I did get slapped, I think, for spilling paint. I mean, it was like an art class, something that was a mistake. I mean, there was no intention to it. And I remember thinking that was pretty unfair.
Did you go to Star of the Sea too?
Yes.
Okay.
No, I went to Star of the Sea, yes.
Yes. Jack mentioned it earlier. He said something about the town took it over. Did anybody remember him saying that? That I missed?
Yeah, it was run as a seaside school just for 6th grade. Maybe only for about 5 years. I was the first year that did that. That was fantastic, that school. It was a lot of fun.
So when it was run as Seaside School, was it still Catholic nuns? Was that more of a public?
No.
That became public?
No.
Okay.
Yep. They the Catholic school shut down, and then the town leased the building and ran it as a public school for a few years. So, everyone had been in kind of their neighborhood schools, and then we all came together in 6th grade and got jumbled up, and you met kids from a totally different world. It was a huge mixing.
Did it feel like that? Did it were the neighborhoods so, I don't want to use the word segregated, it's not the right word, but you know what I mean, like sort of insular? So insular that it was like a whole new group of people. Wow.
Totally. You had bounds to your neighborhood that you played with kids in that neighborhood, but you would never just think of going to somebody else's neighborhood and playing until we all got mixed up in 6th grade, I think.
I don't think that, is it the same way now? Does anybody know? Is it still by neighborhood which elementary school you go to? Or is it more sort of interspersed?
It's about to be one for the entire town, which I think is going to change a lot. Certainly there's going to be a lot more driving of kids to school. More traffic. Less bike riding.
Yeah, I think, when it was a different time, I guess, but the bike riding and walking, I think, was good. You learned your way around, you had some responsibility.
Well, as Jack said, I appreciate you all joining us because it is such a nice day out. And I think we'll probably revisit this topic down the road. But does anybody have anything else they want to mention?
Schools?
On schools or teachers or academic sports related to schools? We can be
I really
broad.
I liked Mr. Levitt in high school. He was the Latin teacher. He was one of my favorites.
Do they even still teach Latin now?
I think they do, but I'm not sure.
It is funny how,
And
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in French, I always enjoyed taking French classes. And, you know, every once in a while we'll go to a French-speaking country, and I'm amazed at how much I can bring out from those high school French classes. I can still get by.
Oh, let me ask you, Marge, you brought up the what do you do after high school? What were, you know, I don't know where Jack went, but let's talk women wise. What were your options? I know we're all talking different generations here, but
We had to
yeah.
We had to choose. They had a college course and a business course, and you followed one of those paths. And of course, my grandmother always wanted me to go into home ec in that path, but they wouldn't let me. They told me to take the college course. So that was, you know, the sciences and the maths, and no typing or secretarial stuff or anything like that. But then, you know, to be told, "No, you're too stupid." I did go to college. I did graduate from college. So, but you know, it was like, it was just different than now. We didn't go visit schools. We just said, "What do you want to be?" "Well, I guess I'll be a gym teacher." So, all right, well, here's the catalogs for those. Pick one, apply, and go. So, hope you get
I
in.
graduated high school in '80, and I felt like everything was possible at that time. I mean, it was, you could, you know, that whole women's lib thing had happened, that every option was open. You could go into anything you wanted. Didn't feel any limitations. I will say, though, in the younger grades, they were trying to, I guess, to be more inclusive about the advanced and the not so advanced kids. And then when I was in school, they decided to get away with calling it like advanced and not advanced. And they had, I remember it was like duckies and kittens for reading. But everyone knew what it meant. Everyone knew the kittens were the advanced readers and the duckies were the slow readers. So they were going through all these hoops so that you wouldn't get stigmatized, but everyone knew what it meant.
We got junior high, and we were put into grades 7-1, 7-2, 7-3, 7-4, 7-5. I think we're up to 7-8. I think 7-1. I think it started 7-1 with the really smart kids, and then it went from there. So again, they labeled us all as,
yeah,
and everybody knew what it meant,
right?
So,
yeah.
And then they had the special class for the special ed people, and that's what they were called, the special classes.
And then in high school, the special ed, they ran the tunnel. I don't know if you remember the tunnel.
Oh, the tunnel.
Right, and they would like serve like junk food. They had like those special ed kids would cook, and they would sell like brownies and.
Oh, I guess I don't remember.
They had like a little snack stand that they would sell food in the tunnel for those. It was like some vocational program where they were learning to make and sell stuff.
But I'm glad you asked about the women opportunities or options when we graduated, because I'm way before 1980. And basically, when we graduated, women were either going to be teachers, nurses, or secretaries. That's what I remember. And I was so determined I wasn't going to be a secretary that I never learned to type, which obviously 30 years later, when computers came in, was a big disadvantage. I still type with like 4 fingers. But I think that really affected teachers in schools nowadays, because we had some fabulous women teachers who nowadays would probably be CEOs or entrepreneurs or who knows what, but you know, the ones who were great at maths or sciences, or now would go into math, science or whatever. But back then, I remember basically they talked about, you know, nursing, teaching, secretaries. That was kind of it.
And I know in like my mother's generation, like if you were a teacher and you got pregnant, you know, you couldn't be a teacher anymore. Things like that. So
before that, you couldn't even be married and be a teacher.
Yeah.
If you read some of the things in the Messenger, it says, you know, whatever her name was had to leave teaching because she got married.
Right. So definitely things have changed for the better that way.
So not to put you on the spot, Jack, as our male, but what was it? What were the expectations for you? And like I was saying before, everybody here is different generations and things have changed, but did you feel like you could do anything you wanted?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I had to jump off for a phone call. So I haven't been listening, but it was interesting to pop back in and hear the last 30 seconds. Was home economics discussed before
Not
the end?
really, a little bit.
That was one
I
of
mean,
my
the men's and
favorite
the boys and girls were definitely separate. The boys took shop and the girls took sewing.
I took home ec in junior high.
They started mixing it when I was in junior high.
They started mixing it, but before that it was separate.
Yeah.
Oh, and shop was great. I was never, ever a good student, and I could not wait to get out of high school. Never went to college. I was absolutely hands-on. And I also grew up in two family-owned businesses in town where I worked a lot when I was a kid. At first it was fun and got me out of my parents' hair, but I kept, I had a car. I bought a car when I was young and sort of made do for myself as I got through life. But no, I mean, it was great. I mean, we were lucky because there were always, back then you could work on a car as a kid and you could, we had a great time and a great group of friends. I mean, I can't count the number of teams that we had. I think there were either 14 or 16 midget football teams in town when I was a kid. And that was just before soccer came along and sort of decimated midget football. But I mean, I never, nothing divided along sex lines ever really
we were talking a little bit about tracking in school. How, they had like advanced programs and
yeah, I wasn't anywhere near that.
Do you remember the tunnel in high school?
Oh,
I had
yeah.
asked about that because that was kind of the special ed kids ran a program down there, but I seem to be the only one who remembers that. So maybe that was only for a few years.
Oh,
but
no,
that was there.
It was great breakfast. That was
okay.
You could run through there between classes and grab a Danish and a coffee and head to your next class.
A student could get a coffee because there was no way.
I think so.
Because I remember at one point, I think the tunnel, they wanted to serve Coca-Cola, and the school said no. It's got to be milk.
So I mean, back in the day, so I grew up obviously by the library. I grew up next to the high school, and that made it so that when we were in elementary school, me and all my neighborhood friends were hanging around the high school. Football practice, basketball practice. We went to all the games. We were the water boys. Me and the Croto boys were water boys for the high school team when the football games were played behind the old high school. Mm-hmm. You really, I mean, you were a lot more unscripted, unscheduled, and resourceful as kids, is what I remember.
I remember being, tag along to my brother's football games and stuff, and they would let me run the chains.
Yeah.
The 10-yard chains, and that was like a big responsibility. And
well, and Maureen, I mean, we both grew up next to the tracks.
Yeah.
So we said in Y Pond, which is no longer there, but we had a pond out back that was that had boards and lights on it at one time until the kids shot the lights out with BB guns. But that was our playground. That was, that was the wilderness. The wilderness could be the tracks, but it could also be, as somebody else was talking about earlier, it was the corner lot in your neighborhood,
right,
where there are now 2 or 3 houses, but you could get lost in there forever and grab a stick and play war or whatever. I mean, speaking about playing war, my uncle, my great uncle Charles Osborne, always told the story about playing war in the fields with wearing his grandfather's Civil War uniform, which is now in the GAR, which is pretty amazing. That uniform went through, I think it was 14 battles during the Civil War, and Charles's namesake, Gray's grandson, was off scurrying around in the Marblehead fields playing war with it. So
that makes my head explode.
Yeah.
Jack, where was Y Pond? You mentioned Y Pond. It's so familiar. Where was that?
So Y Pond was the railroad Y. If off of Village Street, if you get on the tracks at Bessem Street, go under the bridge and head out of town, that would be the train path. And then the train tracks would split and go towards Salem or go towards Swampscott, and that was the Y for the railroad tracks, which is where they would swap out cars and redirect train cars. So right where the electrical transfer station is, right there, right behind it, 20 feet behind that was, and there is a path that still goes through the Y, but the pond is pretty much dried up. It filled in over time, and all the water went towards Prince Street. There's a real marshy area over by Prince Street now, Prince Street, Edgewood Road, and no, it was again, when you lived in Marblehead, you were also known by what pond you skated at as a kid. And
that's why I was asking, because I remember ice skating, and I can't figure out where it was. Maybe it was there and it's not there anymore.
It's not there anymore. And you were probably up at Oliver's Pond or Bobby's Pond up in, if you went to Glover School.
No.
The end of Brookhouse
What
Drive.
street did you grow up on?
Pickwick and then Palmer Road.
Okay. Yeah, so I would have thought Oliver's Pond or
At the end
Ware's
of
Pond.
Off Marion Road, that's off the tracks. It would have been behind DeVos's gas station.
Maybe that was it.
Would have been behind DeVos's mobile gas station at the end of Brookhouse Drive.
Oh yeah, I know Oliver's Pond, but I don't remember. I think there actually was one up on Tedesco going towards Swampscott that we skated at, and also
There's a pond across from Tedesco.
There's a pond in back of, I think it's 127 Tedesco, between the back of 127 Tedesco and the YMCA. There's a pond in there.
Yeah.
Still there.
And then of course the pond where they near the red house where they, on Pond Street where they sail the little boats.
Oh, Red's Pond.
Red's Pond. That was my
Yeah.
pond to skate on.
Red's Pond was one of those ponds that sort of transcended neighborhoods.
Yeah.
I mean, Black Joe's was, I think, more the Peach Islands, Barney Gat neighborhood pond, and then, but Red's Pond was, people came from all over town for some reason to Red's Pond. But other than that, you were pretty well segregated to your pond, and there was, and it's also seemed like it also seemed like ponds froze over in November and opened
lasted
up
till April.
Exactly, but maybe that's just
Our memories.
The other things we did though was, I was babysitting at 12 years old. And we'd have in charge of like 5 and 6 kids. And we'd take them for walks and take them to the park. And I don't think I trust a 12-year-old now. And then we used to be able to go out at night. I remember because I played Lassie League softball, but then the men had a men's league. And my friend and I would go down and we'd beg the guys because they were in high school or college, can we keep score for you? And we'd sit on their bench and keep score for the games. It was like, we did that for like 3 or 4 years, 3 or 4 summers. If you wanted to find us, we'd be down there.
I know my mother's rule was like, you couldn't go to the beach by yourself until you passed Red Cross swimming. So, you had to take swimming lessons. We had to pass, I don't know what level it was, but once we did that, we could go to the beach by ourselves. At, probably 8 or 9, 10 years old, we would go to the beach by ourselves, just walk down to Bessem's Beach.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And Marge, did you play, or maybe others did too, did you play sports for the town as well as sort of like private, leagues?
Played,
Were you for like
we
high school?
We had park league when we were really little, and we'd go down and each, again, segregated into the town. We'd have our park and we'd go down for the mornings and play kickball or do GIMP or arts and crafts and stuff. Then I think it was 6th grade, I started with the Lassie League, and that went up to 8th or 9th grade. And like I said, well, I got split session, so I couldn't play sports in 7th grade. But after that, I played field hockey and softball and track. So you were busy all the time.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Like school.
I know, it's okay. It's all right. There's so many opportunities to share. We'll do this again. Like Jack.
I would say walking to school. I mean,
Oh yeah.
we would obviously walk to school, but I didn't walk by myself. You would walk over to your friend's house and knock on the door, and then we would walk together. So
I
there
was
was
afraid
always
of
kind of like
dogs.
almost like a route of kids you would go with and kind of pick up kids on the way.
I was afraid of dogs, so there was a girl down the street that I'd have to go to her house every morning, and she'd walk me to school for kindergarten and 1st grade because I wouldn't walk to the Gary school by myself.
No, we ton of kids in Girdler Road neighborhood, Haley Road. So I was the one who was always on time, so I would be the one who would start it. I'm still that way, focused on getting things done on time. So I would, knock on their doors. And at one of our high school reunions, I think it was Heidi Briggs said she still has nightmares of me showing up at her door, being all ready for school, and she'd just be waking up.
Well, we have pictures of like the neighborhood kids the first day of school. You'd have to line up in the street or somebody's yard and get your picture taken so it was like the neighborhood kids.
Yeah.
Well, that's neat. Wow.
And then they used the crossing guards were sometimes real police. I mean, they were like full policemen with badges.
I was a crossing guard.
I was too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we got to
that's
go to a
right,
Red
but
Sox game.
But at where we would cross down near the gas station to Cross Street, and people would go up to Road School, and the Star of the Seers would go the other way. They had a real policeman at that place.
We had real policemen with us at some of the crossing guards, but we were the crossing guards, and we had the little striped white sash thing that we had to wear. And
I don't remember them being kids. Other people do.
Oh,
yeah.
No, we were 6th grade. You got to be a crossing guard because I did it at Elm Street, and then they send you down. Then we reverse, change places, and I got to go down by Pearl Street, and I liked that one because I had a crush on one of the boys that I got to cross. And but at the end of the season, at the end of school, they take us into the Red Sox ball game for a reward.
I remember at Christmas, you had to give a little Christmas gift to your teachers, but also you had to bring one to the policeman who at that junction crossing. Like you'd bring him a little box of Thin Mints or something. I don't know. That was a
We
big
had Christmas
thing
parties.
about you always had to give gifts to all your teachers at Christmas.
And we had Christmas parties in school too,
Yeah.
and we had to bring gifts. You picked a name, and we had the Valentine boxes. Remember those?
We
Do you
did
have those?
and May Day, we made those little baskets in school
Yep.
out of like construction paper or something.
I love that you mentioned GIMP because I hadn't thought about GIMP in 6
Oh my
years.
God.
GIMP
It's
was-
back.
oh, that was so. Did you say it's back?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's back.
Oh, I'm gonna go get some.
There you go.
It's like
I
the
taught my
recorder.
kids when they were little because I'm like, we used to do this at Park League all the time.
The new stuff isn't the same as the old stuff. I don't know why. It's a different kind of texture because I remember
Oh.
using it as a kid too. And then do you remember the weird one because GIMP had like a little bit of flatness to it, and then
Yeah.
the round stuff came out like years after that, and they tried to make it the new GIMP, and it was like, no, this is false.
Didn't work
Yeah.
the same way.
And now it's back again.
It's back.
Huh.
There you
I
go.
think GIMP is like the recorder. It never really went away.
Right. Yeah, right.
I think I still have a few pieces of my GIMP work around.
I
Well,
found my
sorry,
gum.
I've got to run, but thanks for coming, and it was nice talking to y'all.
Thanks, Jack.
Have a great day.
You too.
Yep. Bye, Jack.
I found my gum wrapper chain. Remember making
remember
those?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Is that
don't
just
keep
what
any
it
of
sounds-
those.
Is that what it
Yeah.
sounds like? You take the gum wrapper and you put them
Gum
all
wrapper,
together?
and you make it
Yeah, and you make like a long chain.
Okay.
I found mine. I was cleaning out the attic and I found one. God, it's probably 4 feet long.
Wow. Yeah.
There's a really good example of that in Sandra Bullock's really bad movie 28 Days. She literally makes gum wrapper chains.
Wow. And then we used to make, like, dandelion chains, like link
Oh,
all the
yeah.
dandelions together to make necklaces and crowns and all that kind of stuff.
Did you ever do baseball cards in the spokes of your bike?
Yeah, my Mickey Mantle card was one.
Oh no.
Yeah.
To make it kind of makes the sound. Yeah.
Hi, Margie.
Hi, who's
Hi,
saying
Marjorie. Welcome.
Your aunt.
hi? Oh, that on. It took you this long to figure out how to get in?
Yep. Well, I started too early and then I got distracted.
Oh. Is there anything that you'd like to share with us? Any thoughts or memories? We've talked about a whole slew of different things: going to school, what it was like what we wore to school, and
I had the same
lunchtime.
teacher she had in Gary School.
I can tell you every teacher I had in Gary School.
Oh my goodness!
I
Really?
Kindergarten was Peggy Marsh.
Miss Marr.
And Barbara Martin was an assistant. And then I had Mary Powers for first grade,
Yep. so
Dorothy
did I.
Richmond for second grade, Madeline Orn for third grade, Avis Finch for fourth, Nellie Horahan for fifth, and Nellie Walsh for sixth. And she was also the principal. And one of my funny memories was when I was in the kindergarten, which was always in the morning. We had some sort of a display of paper dolls or something on the windowsills, and I thought that Barbara Martin said, "Now you come back in the afternoon and such will happen." Of course, I couldn't remember what that was, but I went home for lunch, and I said to my mother, "I've got to go back to school this afternoon," and she didn't believe me, but she let me go. And I walked down to the kindergarten. Of course, there was nobody there. And I thought, and decided I better leave. Well, as I was trying to leave, who did I bump into but Nellie Walsh? I was scared to death of her because she was the principal. And she, of course, wondered why I was there. And I told her that I must have been mistaken. And anyway, she let me go home, and I cried the whole way home. I was so embarrassed. But anyway, that's my funny story from kindergarten.
Well, my grandmother was friends with Mary Powers and Avis Finch and the Walsh sisters, and they used to come to our house and play cards. So, I mean, and Miss Powers came and had dinner with us sometimes. So it was like I had my teachers there for dinner.
I think it was every Thursday night they played bridge.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
Were all the teachers women throughout everybody's career? Were there any
high
male
school?
teachers?
High school we had men. Mr. Remick.
Unmarried.
Junior high.
Huh?
Unmarried.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All the women were not married. They were all old maids.
Yeah, it was mentioned earlier that if you got married I assume married and then pregnant, you had to leave teaching.
Yeah. Miss Litchman had to leave because she actually got married and got pregnant. So I think that, well, that was after me, but
I had married teachers though in elementary school.
you did?
I had Mrs. Rocket and Mrs. Kent. They were both married. So I think it changed in that 20-year gap between us.
I had a Mrs. Foster and a Mrs. Brookhouse at the Glover School.
Oh, you went to the Glover School?
Yes, 100
My
years.
husband, George, went to the Glover School. Who did you have for teachers?
Gosh, I don't remember. I remember Mrs. Doe.
Mrs. Dobe?
Mrs. Doe.
Oh, D-O-W?
Oh.
D-O-E, yeah.
D-O-E.
Yes, that's
She was only a Mrs. because she was a widow, though.
Oh.
Miss Atherton, I remember her.
Oh, Miss Atherton.
Yeah.
Yeah. She was the one that was murdered, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was killed.
Yeah,
Carol Appleton.
yeah.
I had nuns. But it was a big thing when they finally allowed the nuns to wear normal clothes. That was like a huge event, because they used to have to wear all their, you know, veils and
Yeah.
stuff. And then one day, suddenly they were in normal clothes, and it was a shock to you as a kid.
I bet.
This is to my aunt Marjorie. Where did the kids go to school? She lived on the neck. So where did your kids go to grammar school?
Well, they were, at one point I had kids in almost every school in town because they were bused. And they went to the Coffin School. Charles started at the Coffin School, I think. And then Bobby went to the, what's the one?
Rhodes.
No, the one off of Pleasant Street. It was a fairly new one, but it isn't now. It was down that long.
The Bell?
Bell? Yeah, I think it was Bell. Yeah.
Yeah.
He went to the Bell School. And then he was transferred to the Rhodes School. And then he went to junior high. He was in the Rhodes School from the 2nd grade through the 6th. Then he went up to junior high and Marblehead High. No, he didn't, because we moved by then. He didn't. Yeah, we moved when Charles was 12. And so
I remember the kids were all in different schools.
Yeah, they were. Everyone, and then Amy at that point was in preschool. So there were 4 different places that we had to go to. It was interesting.
The only time I did get a ride to school was when I lived with you for that time period. And George took me every morning in his VW without any heat on, his little bug, and drove me to a friend's house so we could walk to school. But I was on the neck for a few months. So I did get a ride then. They didn't make me walk.
One time Bobby decided, I told him he loved to walk. And but he was really little. And there was a store on the other side called Baldwin's, was it? Baldwin's Market?
Yeah.
And it was
at the head of Beach.
Yeah, the head of Beach Street. And you used to be able to go in there, you know, for meat and groceries. And so he decided he was going to walk over there. And so he did one time when he was just a little kid. And we didn't, we sound like terrible parents, but I don't think we were. But anyway, he did that. And then another time he was at Dr. Michelson's, which was in Clifton. You remember Dr. Michelson's? He was on Clifton Avenue. And,
yep.
And Bob was there. And I was going to go pick him up. I had left him off. I was going to go pick him up. Well, I went to pick him up and he wasn't there. He decided he was going to walk to Margie's house, which is 45 Peach Highlands, and he did. I found him down by the Story School.
See, we were always found whenever we went for someplace.
I think things have changed. Kids can't do things like that anymore.
We got responsible parents now.
No. It's a different world. Well, we're approaching 11 o'clock, and I'm sorry that a couple people have just joined us. We have recorded this for whatever you all missed, and within the next couple days, I'll put it up on our website. You can access it through our website, Marblehead Memories page. You can also see us on Facebook. I'm going to stop the stream, and then it will be available in the videos section of our Facebook page. So I want to say thank you to all who participated. Like I said earlier, we're skipping next month because the first Saturday is July 4th. So I hope everybody can enjoy themselves and stays safe and healthy. And we do have a lot of upcoming programs, so check out, they're virtual, so you can stay safe at home via Zoom. So check it out on our upcoming programs page on the website. And again, thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank
Have a
you for
great
doing this.
day. Of course.
Thank you for doing it.
Absolutely. Have a great day.